Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun video, we are going to be attempting to fix a basic 3D printer. Now, a 3D printer is just like any other tool out in a garage or workshop, and over time, it needs proper maintenance, and you need to tinker with it to make sure it's running to the best of its abilities and give it some good old-fashioned TLC, some tender loving care. Now, I do a lot of 3D printing behind the camera, behind the scenes, so to speak. If you guys follow my social media stories, from time to time, you guys will see me posting a little quick 10, 15, 30-second clip of the 3D printers running while they are making very cool and creative designs. I do a lot of 3D printing for myself, but also for family, friends, and loved ones. And you guys know that I 3D print and make the 3D printed blade alignment jigs for scroll saw woodworking to make sure that your scroll saw is quickly dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees for stack cutting or compound cutting or cutting out thicker stock and puzzles like that. I've got two magnets hot glued to the back of this one, and this one is the one that I have stuck to the side of the Rikon scroll saw that I'm currently using out here to where it's within easy reach to where I can just quickly pick it up and double check to make sure the scroll saw is dialed in. I got my very first 3D printer back, I believe it was in the summer of 2020. I finally picked one up. I wanted to get to tinkering around and learning them, and that was a basic longer LK4 3D printer. Now, I still have it. I don't use it as much as the newer printers, but when I took some pictures and sent it to some friends who knew a lot more about 3D printing than I did at the time, they said it was a basic knockoff or clone of the Ender3, and that is what we have sitting back here on the workbench. This is another one of the 3D printers that I have, and in case you guys were wondering why you do not see them out in the workshop, is because a 3D printer is very technologically advanced, I guess is the correct phrase, and they need to be in a climate controlled environment. Now, I could of course get a 3D printer enclosure and have it out here in the workshop, but with floor space and counter space at a premium, it's easier to have it in the house where it is climate controlled year round, and I do not have to worry about fluctuating temperatures, because fluctuating temperatures can affect the 3D print filament that you print the creative designs with over on 3D printers. I hope that makes sense. But you guys have seen a small 3D print here. This takes, for reference, around an hour and a half to 2 hours to 3D print. And here at the time of this video's recording is one of the more recent 3D prints that I have made. This is a free file off of the Thingiverse website, and it is a very cool and creative shark head diorama. It was meant to be a lot bigger, but I shrank it down. That's really cool when it comes to 3D printing. You can enlarge or shrink stuff down depending on the size of the bed you have for the 3D printer. But I had an idea pop into my head when I seen this file. I was just curious about some shark items. I typed in shark in Thingiverse, and this eventually popped up in the search results. But I thought if I printed this out, get it painted up very nice and lifelike, you know, with some tropical flair and everything, I could then make a logo to put in the mouth. Now, I will either paint this up with some acrylic craft paints, or I'll take it to my mom and she will paint it up. I'll tell her what colors I want used and everything. But then again, I want to make a logo to put in the mouth, and then I can drill a hole in the back and it can hang on the wall like a trophy taxidermy piece, if you guys are familiar with those. But I thought it would look real cool with some of the Jaws stuff that I have. You guys know I'm a huge fan of the Jaws movie and that franchise and the memorabilia and the history of it and all. But for reference, keep in mind, an hour and a half to 2 hours, this took around 26 to 27 hours, so a continuous day of just 3D printing. It was printed just like this, from the base all the way up to the tip of the nose, and you can see how cool and creative and versatile 3D printing is. But I was 3D printing a basic lithopane nightlight to where you print it out. It's very thin material, and you can put a person's photo, a quote, scripture, song lyrics, or even a company logo in it. You get a dollar store or a nice nightlight from it for it, and then you can clip it in the bottom, and it has a nice glow to it. They're very popular to make and create. But I was 3D printing one, and I started having issues. I started hearing the clicking noise that you hear with 3D printers like the Ender3, and the filament was not going through the hot end or the Bowden tube. So I reached out to I took some photos. I think I took a little video clip, and I sent it to my buddy Sam at Knighthood Creations, and he told me what I potentially needed to fix it. Sam is a great friend of mine. I talk to him almost daily, and he's always great for giving me feedback when it comes to not only 3D printing, but also laser engraving, because he has a laser engraver and a 3D printer, and he does a lot of research, and he is also the person that helped me design and create the 3D printed blade alignment jigs for those curious. He's very cool. Amazing friend to have, so thank you, buddy, for that. But here are the parts he recommended that I get. I got some new Bowden tubes, and I got a new hot end from the Amazon website. As I said, I got my very first 3D printer back in 2020, and along the way I have picked up a lot of spare parts. So I also have those here with the tools and everything in case I need something else once I get everything taken apart. What I'm going to do now is move the camera over to where you guys can see what was happening when the 3D printer started making that clicking noise, and then I'm going to put the camera on the mounted tripod to hopefully give you guys the best view possible as we again attempt to fix the 3D printer and hopefully get it back up and running. Before moving to the time-lapse portion, I have opened the package, and you can see here we have the new hot end that will go here. We have some new what are called the rubber socks that go on the end of the hot end. Got a nice sticker from the Capricorn company. So I don't even know if I'm going to need these Bowden tubes I ordered, but it's good to have these on hand because you do need to replace them. But you can see here what was happening. The printer started off very good with laying down the raft and the base of the nightlight, but over time it quit feeding the filament through, and it was only coming out in like globs and dots. So this is what we're going to be attempting again to repair. What I'm going to do is get this old 3D print off. I'm going to put the camera over on the tripod, and we're going to start taking the printer apart. And we are going to begin by removing the failed 3D print off of the printer bed. I'm going to open my parts bin and look at the pieces we ordered from Amazon, and I'm going to begin the disassembly process by removing the shroud here off of the hot end and removing it. Everything here is pretty much Allen screws and Allen keys and everything, so it's just a matter of getting the proper one. I had replaced the actual block before, but I had not taken the actual heating element and thermostat off and removed it, so that is what I am doing now. And I want to make sure I am removing the proper wires, so I'm going to have to trace it back to the motherboard. And to do that, I had to flip the Ender3 on its side and remove the dust shroud from the bottom of the Ender3, and I had never taken this off before, so all of the screws were pretty much locked in place. Again, it's just a matter of finding the proper Allen wrench to remove it. I did a quick cleanup with a soft brush on the dust fan since it was open and I could get to it. But now I am just following the wires back to know which ones to remove off of the motherboard. I wanted to be very careful here so as not to damage anything. And I'm using a very small micro screwdriver to remove those. And we now have the old one pulled through. And now it is a matter of snaking the new wires through this sock material here. And I got very frustrated with it. I got it in all the way until about the last 2 or 3 inches, and I just decided to cut this sock material and move on. The wires kept getting caught in it, but once I had them pulled all the way through, it was time to reconnect those to the motherboard. One of the wires was just a clip, and the other one I had to use the 2 flathead screws with the micro screwdriver to put it on. And I put some electrical tape where I cut that sock material. And then it was a matter of getting everything back in place. And now it's essentially just working in reverse to put everything back together to where we can test the 3D printer to see if the new parts will work properly. If you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. But once everything is back in place, we can flip the Ender3 back over. And I raised up the gantry arm a little bit and done some more cleaning here now that all of the parts were away. And it's now time to begin assembling everything once again. And again, it's various size Allen screws, and it's just a matter of finding the correct wrench. Right here I had misplaced one of the wrenches and I had to find it again. to put our new piece on and lock it in place. And now we have to hook the Bowden tube up to where the filament goes through, making sure everything is nice and tight. But then I'm going to continue putting everything back together here, and all in all this took me about 40 minutes because I was filming a video and I was moving the camera and setting it up on the tripod to give you guys hopefully the best vantage point. But if you are familiar with 3D printers, you could potentially do this fix in probably 15 or 20 minutes. But now that I have some zip ties holding all of the wires back in place, I have the 3D printer powered back on, and we are going to re-level the bed here. Since we did flip the printer over, I want to make sure that the bed is still leveled. And I'm doing this in a very old school way with a piece of computer paper here. And you want just a little bit of friction between the nozzle and the laser bed itself, or the 3D printer bed, excuse me. But I will now preheat the 3D printer, and we will add some glue here, and I will select a file while the printer continues to preheat. And I'm picking a very small file here. It's a cross-themed guitar pick that doesn't take up much filament, and it also doesn't take long to print itself. I feel like that's cool to have on any 3D printer you might have in a garage or workshop. Have a small little test file that only takes around 8 to 10 to 15 minutes to print. That way whenever you work on the printer, you can quickly do the test file to make sure everything is once again working properly. And you can see that the 3D printer is laying down the filament and building up the guitar pick with the cross in it. And this is a file I found on the Thingiverse website. But I was very happy with the fix and very happy to see the Ender3 3D printer up and running again. And again, it did not take long at all for the 3D printer to make this. I stayed close by to keep an eye on it to make sure it was running properly. But after it was done and the printer cooled down a little bit, it was time to remove the guitar pick from the bed, and we were ready to close the video. And that, my friends, is going to about wrap up today's video. Thank you all for following along from start until now. Hopefully the video was not too long or drawn out for you guys. And hopefully along the way you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit along the way when it comes to 3D printers in general or fixing and repairing them. They can be a little bit tedious to take apart and work on, but they are very creative and versatile machines to have out in a garage or workshop, or in a proper place like an enclosure or in a climate-controlled environment. Again, a dusty woodworking shop like this is not the ideal place to have a 3D printer. I have had my original one out here running before, but a lot of people told me to get it in a climate-controlled environment to have the best quality of 3D print as possible. So that is why the 3D printers are in the house as opposed to the dusty workshop, if that makes any sense. But we got the printer taken apart, and I want to once again, before we go any further, thank my buddy Sam at Knighthood Creations for leading me in the right direction after I had told him what was going on with it. He led me in the right direction when it came to the parts that I needed to pick up to where I could potentially fix it and get it back up and running, and that's what led to today's video. So thank you, buddy, for that. But we got it taken apart. We got everything cleaned up. I dusted everything off a little bit, and then we got everything put back together, and the most tedious part was snaking the wires back through that black tubing. I got it almost all the way through except for like the last 2 inches, and I kind of got frustrated with it and just cut it off, and then we cleaned everything up and wrapped it with electrical tape. I'm not the best when it comes to electrical work. I'll freely admit that to you guys here, but I do take my time with it, just like over at the scroll saw or any other tool, and I worked with everything and got it back together. And once we got it put back together, we added some filament here. We preheated the bed. We re-leveled it with the piece of paper, which is the old school way of leveling 3D printers, and it's just still a way that I like to level them. And then we got a file selected, and we were 3D printing. And to my knowledge, the 3D printer is now back up and running properly. And what we made today is also a free file off of the Thingiverse website. And here it is. It is a cross-themed guitar pick. These are very cool little items to make when you are running close to the end of a roll of 3D filament. Here's another one like just on the 3D printer that you can see behind me on top of it. But it's kind of mind-blowing that the 3D printer takes this stuff here that is coiled around the spool, essentially little tubes of plastic here, and it melts it down and creates beautiful designs like this little cross-themed guitar pick. And I also think it's cool if you work on the 3D printers, if you do the maintenance from time to time and change out nozzles, change settings or anything, to have a file on your printer that doesn't take a lot of filament or a long time to 3D print. For reference, this guitar pick took around 8 to 10 minutes to 3D print completely, and it was just a great way to ensure that the 3D printer, was working properly. Keep in mind, 8 to 10 minutes for the guitar pick, but something a lot bigger with more detail, like the shark head right here, this took around 26 to 27 hours, so a continuous day of 3D printing. And I hope it goes without saying that a 3D printer is not a machine that you want to walk away from long periods of time. They are a lot safer tool than others like laser engravers or stuff like that, but you do need to keep an eye on them. I know some of my friends have web cameras positioned on the 3D printers, and they have an auto off so they can check the web camera, and let's just say the 3D print messes up like the Nightlight had on the one that led me to wanting to fix the Ender3, and I reached out to my buddy Sam, but they can go on their phones and just shut their printer off if they are away. I hope that makes sense there. Again, I have stepped away from the 3D printers, but again, I do not leave them unattended for long periods of time. But something 8 to 10 minutes didn't take long to 3D print, but something like the shark's head, of course, you will not, I was trying to think there, stand beside it for 26, 27 hours. I was just periodically checking on it, making sure everything was still printing properly, and if it wasn't, I could just as quickly go over there and hit the off button or stop print and shut the printer off and potentially try again. But I just hope this also shows how creative a 3D printer can be for a weekend woodworker maybe, because there is a plethora on 3D printing websites like Thingiverse or other 3D printing sites where you can download the files or even pick files up for a few dollars. They're very inexpensive. You can create very versatile jigs like the 3D printed blade alignment jigs that I make. Again, I make a lot of these and make these available for people. When we do the Klingspor Woodworking Shop store anniversaries, I'll print out 10 to 12 to 15 of these and give these out to people that I feel are genuinely interested in scroll saw woodworking. Then you can print out stuff like the guitar pick here, and then you can print out creative designs like this shark head diorama here. So there is a plethora of files for 3D printing, and you can even print out multi-part prints to where pieces get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can build them up. Of course, printers come in all shapes and sizes now. There's little small desktop ones that sit right beside a computer. There's normal size 3D printers like the Ender3 here, and then there's even bigger ones that can print stuff like the size of an actual helmet in one continuous 3D print. And I've even 3D printed with some copper PLA filament that the Longer company printed. I got this off of the key ring. You can see where the key ring's been on it. The ring there is dirty, but this is a guitar pick holder to where you can see the guitar pick goes right in it, and you can put it on a key ring or a necklace, and your guitar pick is easily accessible if you are a musician, to where you can start picking on a guitar or an instrument. So really cool. I've made a bunch of these and give these to the people and the musicians at church, and it's a very heartfelt gift to make. And with the size of that 3D printer bed, I can print out 6, 7, 8 of these at one single time. Again, I like to have a small print like this when I'm getting close to the end of a roll of filament. And the filament comes in various styles, textures, colors. They have tie-dye filament, they have color shift filament. It's just that I like to print with the white, like with the case. Once again, with the shark head, once it's printed, you can go in and paint everything. I know now on the market they have the printers that are multicolor printers, but this is just a standard run-of-the-mill 3D printer, the Ender3, and it's pretty much the printer that a lot of people will start off with if they are curious about jumping into the world of 3D printing, because they are so easy to work on, and the parts are readily available on sites like Amazon, and they are also very inexpensive. I know I have 3D printed a tool holder for all the wrenches, the clippers, and the putty knife here that helps get prints off the bed, as you've seen in today's video. I've upgraded to a glass bed. I've also added the extruder here. I've upgraded that from a plastic one to a metal one, and I've 3D printed an extruder spinner, the classic Nintendo 64 logo that spins as the printer is printing. But you can customize and tinker with these and maximize these printers and keep upgrading them, keep upgrading parts and printing parts for them. There's feet you can print for them to lessen the vibration. There's noise dampening pieces that you can print to dampen the noise of the motor, especially if you have the 3D printer close to like a bedroom or something and you don't want to hear the noise of it 3D printing, if that makes any sense. But again, I want to thank my buddy Sam for leading me in the right direction. I have had 3D printers since around 2020. And along the way, I have picked up a lot of spare parts and pieces to where I can hopefully keep them running without having to wait. I can quickly repair them. I didn't need to use none of the Bowden tube. I only needed to use one of the adapters to hook the one that was on the hot end. But I'm sure I will need these because the Bowden tubes do wear out, just like the nozzles and the feeder gears over time at the extruder. You do have to replace them over time. So I'll just add this stuff with the collection here. But again, thank you, Sam, for leading me in the right direction when it comes to the parts that I needed to get the 3D printer back up and running. And once again, that is a classic Ender3 3D printer. But I hope you guys have found that video, today's video, informative and picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit along the way. And you like the little cool and creative cross-themed guitar pick that we printed for a test after we got everything repaired. But really, really cool. Hope you guys, again, found the video informative. That's about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one. And remember, guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.